Well, hello, everybody. This is Tim Green with Rattle Magazine. Welcome to Rattlecast number 145. So glad you could join me. We have Alexis V. Jackson as our main guest today. She'll be here in about 10 minutes. We're going to start with our Poets Respond poet first. But before we begin, I should say that Rattle is a publication of the Rattle Foundation, a 501c3 nonprofit working to promote the practice of poetry. We've been in continuous publication since 1995 and are unaffiliated with any other organization. We just do it because we love poetry, and I know you do too. So please do click the like button, share, make sure you're subscribed, click the bell for notifications on YouTube, leave a review on iTunes or Spotify or whatever you can do on like Audible, or I don't even use Audible, but whatever you can do on that. Click something to tell the computers that this is good content, and then other people see the content, and then everybody gets to see more poetry, which is what we're trying to do here. Now, today's poet is Gordon Taylor. And we have him right here with the poem "The Entertainers." And here's Gordon right now. Hey, Gordon, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad you could join me. So to start, just explain what inspired this poem and how it came to be. Like, when did you start writing it this week, and how did the poem come to be?
So a friend of mine sent me this article about a teenager in Florida who has been class president throughout his high school career, and a member of the LGBTQ plus community, who's became the valedictorian for his class. And so there was a conversation that Xander, who's the boy in question, had with his principal, and the principal stated that that Xander could not mention his LGBTQ activism within his valedictorian speech, which essentially rendered him speechless on many, many levels. And so this sort of led to me thinking a lot about my own teenage years and learning and education in the late 80s during the AIDS crisis. And I was thinking a lot about the slogan "Silence equals death," which is something that ACT UP used as a slogan in support of activism for AIDS folks. So from there, I started thinking about a whole bunch of things to solve these sort of braids between like historical figures, like there's some ancient Greek history in the poem, and just the tension between different generations. How different is today from back then in the 80s? What is education? And this strange irony of being a valedictorian, where your main goal is to represent and speak, in fact. And to be told that you can't speak. And I started thinking about, the idea of, the supporting character versus the main character, and who's allowed to speak and who's allowed to tell the story and who's allowed to have the stage, so to speak. And I started thinking about, the metaphor of entertainment in relation to that, and in relation to my own sort of personal experiences as well.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear how the poem came to be, because it's such an interesting braid of different ways that you confront the topic through the different sections of the poem. Do you want to go ahead and read it? The Entertainers.
Sure. The Entertainers. Once I was appointed alternate valedictorian in case the main boy got sick. I was a scholar of sex then, glossy men in magazines stacked at the back of a tobacco store on Queen Street. A guidance counselor scratched a penis onto a chalkboard, but never explained pleasure or HIV or how silence equals death, sign bouncing in a documentary we weren't allowed to watch. Plus, today, another valedictorian stares, speechless, into a Florida crowd. He can't say the word gay, and you show me a stone leopard in a book, poking through sand, memorial to the sacred band of Thebes, pairs of male lovers, elite warriors enlisted to defeat an army of Macedonians. It was expected they'd fight harder to defend ardent bonds. They were all slain at Charonia, cameo concluded. Plus, once my brother hated me, though His smothering never succeeded. In my teenage bedroom, floor littered with books and socks, magazines hidden in a box in the closet, his hands circled my throat when he shared a belief that the honor of loving someone means his voice belongs to you. You sound like a girl. Plus, today, my best friend's wedding winds on TV. I gripe about queer sidekicks in Hollywood movies. He has no arc. He speaks just to make the hero laugh. My husband hisses, "Quiet, you're ruining the film. Plus, you don't need this rage anymore." Our clasped fingers made of centuries of holding, our legs braided, a dialogue on our sofa. His own brother, our best man, but I still feel hands crushing my larynx. Plus, once I ran up an ancient green hill but tripped, dropping my spear, just here for you. You looked back at me, protective but annoyed. We reached a crowd of clanging and slicing at the top. I lost sight for hours in a scrum of shields and pink clouds, avoiding cuts, pretending to be dead beside your hushed head in the purpled grass. Plus.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that poem. And I'm glad you read the pluses. I was wondering if you would, because it's a part of it too. And it's a subtle part that maybe people would miss. Just excellent work and a really powerful, moving poem. Thanks for sharing your experience and making poetry relevant.
Thank you so much. And thanks for giving the poem a voice, especially on this topic.
Yeah, definitely my pleasure. Yeah, take care.
Thanks.
Okay, now we're going to take a quick break and we're going to switch gears and go to Alexis V. Jackson, today's main guest. So hang tight and I will be right back. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. As I mentioned, today's guest is Alexis V. Jackson. Alexis is a Philadelphia-born, San Diego-based writer and teacher whose work has appeared all over the place in Poetry Magazine, Jubilat, etc. She's a 2021 finalist for the Poetry Foundation's Ruth, Lilly, and Dorothy Sargent Rosenberg Poetry Fellowship. Erica Hunt selected Jackson's debut collection, which I have right here, My Sister's Country. Which look at this beautiful cover. That's got to be the best cover I've seen in a long time. As second place winner of Core Press Institute's 2019 Poetry Prize, she served as a reader for several publications, including Callaloo and Bomb Magazine. She's lectured at the University of San Diego's English Department and taught poetry at her alma mater, Messiah University. And here she is, Alexis V. Jackson. Hey, Alexis, how you doing?
Hello, how are you, Tim?
I'm great. It's been a very busy weekend for me personally, but I'm so glad. I love the Rattlecast. I love just sitting here hanging out with a poet every Sunday, and I didn't want to miss it, even though I was up till like 2 last night after a big literary festival. But yeah, I'm so glad you could join me. Do you want to start us out with a poem?
Sure. Thank you for having me. I want to say that thank you to Rattlecast and Rattle and to you personally. And also a shout out to my press, Corey Press. So wanted to get that out of the way. I'm going to start with actually the first poem in the book called Dear Mom. And it's hard because, of course, the listeners and viewers can't see the strike through, so I'll do my best to read them.
Oh no, they can. They can read along.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, that's the nice part
Yeah.
about it.
Cool. Alrighty, good. So then we're on the same page. Dear Mom, you wanted me when God didn't. Told me to love him anyway. Told me you had no business acting simple with that self-censoring pause, man. But I was a blessing. A blessing, Mommy? A blessing, little girl. Your blessing? My blessing. And all of this just was like, it was wanting to be something else, but it couldn't because you said it. But somewhere between leaving your house and asking God about him and him and him and him and him, you wanted me and God, he didn't. And I didn't know how to reckon that with my still being. Didn't know if that made you, or God, or God, or her. Maybe I wouldn't be so close to textbook anxious if you done what he, God, said. Maybe I wouldn't be so sad about the word depravity and about sin sickness existing and about people pushing past kids for trains if you'd done what God said. If you'd done what God said, maybe you'd be happier. Maybe you'd be more like Christ and less like all the heathens heathening without thinking about not heathening. Mommy, how do you look at your sin and love her? How do you teach her to be her and still need him who made you cry because of her, made you stop working with the church children because of her, made you think you not worthy because of her? I really want your answer because you, him, and her to me. And I need to know who to be someday. So if I want someone God doesn't, I can know how to answer like you, Adrian. And my blessing, my blessing, my blessing, my blessing, my blessing, and know it.
And that was Dear Mom, the opening poem to this wonderful book, My Sister's Country by Alexis V. Jackson. And this is one of those episodes where it is great that, there are listeners who are listening, but for those who are watching, it's worth watching because there's so much play with the typeset that you do. And the idea of highlighting in like a, what do you call it, like outline text of the, I think it's the black women and girls' voices, in the way that the Christ voice would be red lettered in a red letter Bible. That's such a cool concept, and it really changes the reading experience in a fascinating way. That's one of the things that really stood out from the book, like the way you set it up and introduced that idea, concept, and then the whole book has this great religious kind of feel to it, and sort of like claiming a new religion is an aspect of the book where even a simple line has like a heightened meaning because it's, placed in that kind of spiritual context. It's a really fascinating way to do a book. How did you conceive of that, and what were you thinking as you were going into it?
Yeah. So the red letter part came up in a workshop when I was getting my MFA, and I had done it to one poem, just to see like what people thought of it, and they loved it. And I wanted to make sure it translated well.
Mm-hmm.
And then they said it did. So, of course, that stuck. And as I started to pull the other poems together, it was important to me to make sure people were aware of, like you were saying, there's a way that the speaker in this collection is creating a new religion, right? Is saying, well, what I was taught wasn't right. Mm-hmm. What I was taught excludes these voices or doesn't fully appreciate these voices. And these voices are the foundation of what I was taught, right? Like I received, they are the lens through which I received any idea of what a God or the idea of love is. Mm-hmm. And so it was important that they be highlighted and heightened in that way. And so the red, of course, couldn't go to print because that's expensive.
Yeah,
but
it definitely is.
Yeah. So we did the outline instead. My editor, Anne, was amazing. And so we did the outline instead, and it works really, really well, as well as the end notes. So I think those two coupled together helped to bring that through.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Let's hear another poem. What do you want to read next?
I actually was going to read the poem that's coming out in the next Rattle magazine. So I'm going to read that selection that I'm super excited to
Yeah,
share.
yeah, sure. And I should tell people at home, most of the listeners are subscribers. There is a delay, so we planned on this so that hopefully the issue would start becoming like tomorrow or Friday. But our printer had some printing issues going on in the background, and there's a big, so there's like a 2 week delay. So this issue is going to come out in about 2 weeks. And let me pull up this poem though on a PDF. So explain about what this poem, how this poem came to be as I pull it up.
Yeah, so Wang Ping has a poem called Things We Carry on the Sea. And I was inspired by that to write this poem, in particular, the image of a yellow vessel carrying immigrants and what that can mean. And so, of course, then I thought about, from my own experience and my own history, chattel slavery and those vessels and what it means to be on the sea, as well as generational trauma and the like. So this poem is calling to Wang Ping's poem, but also calling to, I can see her name. I can't see her. Zong. There we go. Governor Baysay Philip Zong. And so I'm imagining what it's like for a child, and going back to a childhood memory for me, which is being in the water, right? And rubber duckies and yellow vessels in that way. But what does it mean to reenact trauma and to have that trauma like in you, even as a child? And so that's what this poem's about, exploring that world where all these things are true.
And so here it is. This is our first look at Rattle's summer issue for people at home. And go ahead and read. Go ahead and read it.
Okay, thanks. What we carry off the sea, Zong survivor's child takes a bath after Wang Ping's things we carry on the sea. It was Sesame Street, Ernie particularly, who taught me how to covet the company of a floating vessel. His duckling shaped and filled with air, mine, always a ship-like boat, both always smiling and squeaking. Splish splash, I was taking a bath. Ernie and I would sing Bing Bang, Elmo saw the whole gang, a song about embarrassment, a song about being stuck in the water after invasion while the unwelcome party, while the unwelcome party arrived, while we are too naked and too surprised and too out-armed, and then we joined them. A splishin' and a splashin'. On wash days when I was allowed to soak my body and hair, you could catch me trying to float in the tub, trying to be a life raft for the Barbies, lying in a row on my tummy. Tugboat would watch from the soap dish, and the pink and green haired trolls would take audience next to the spigot as I sank to the bottom, nappy and knotted, a splash, small-bodied and black. How long can a child at sea hold her breath or float, or try to float, without a bright rubber boat, without the company of others, co-hoping to reach a friendly shore? How long does the splish and splash before she acquiesces? We was a moving and a grooving, we was a rolling and a strolling. Why even here must all the dolls be black and the language be black? It is 1995. Do any still have to jump and sink? A splishin' and a splashin'. How long does a body hold memory of a body? How often does a body reenact someone else's memory? How many songs and sounds tangle us in something like home, where we have reason to greet sated water with nothing to covet?
Yeah, and once again, that is a poem from the summer issue of Rattle is about to come out. What we carry off the sea, Zong survivor's child takes a bath, and it fits really well just with the context of the book in general. That's a poem not in the book, but the same themes come up. That's kind of baptism, a renewed baptism through like my own actual experience. And I think I read that you grew up in a pretty strict Baptist household, right?
I did.
So how did that, and I'm always interested in how someone came to be a poet. So how did that, what influence did that play on you becoming a poet, and how just in general, like, do you remember the first kind of poem you wrote and how you came to be where you are now?
I do. Thank you for that question. It's so layered and beautiful, honestly. I think there's so in my experience as a child, right, growing up in the Black Baptist Church, for Black History Sundays and things like that, and even outside of that, right, there's this thread of connection to Black American literature. So there's, of course, even visually, right, the picture of Martin Luther King Jr. that's on the wall, as well as like the picture of an imagined like white Jesus sometimes, not in every context. So we get those alongside one another. So we are reciting, Langston Hughes and Maya Angelou and Claude McKay in church on Sunday, as well as scripture and discussing the parallels between Moses and the Israelites and Black experience, the themes of overcoming, what it means to have a God who doesn't give you the spirit of fear and allows you to fight in certain ways. But there's also alongside that, what this book struggles with as well, even with Dear Mom, you can see that tension, is also like what happens to women in these contexts, how women's bodies are policed, how women's sexuality is policed, and the grappling I had to do with that. And poetry worked really well, I think, to get to those things. But yeah, my first poem ever written was actually along the veins of, so I'm definitely heavily affected and impacted by and inspired by the Black arts movement. My mother went to college. I have my mother to thank for that, along with my upbringing. But my mother went to school at Bucknell in the 80s. So she was heavily influenced by Nikki Giovanni and all these voices and Sonia Sanchez. And that's what she taught me. So I was, listening to these poems and having her recite them to me, even like while she's rocking me as a baby. So the first poem I ever wrote was along those veins, called I Won't Stop Trying. And I knew it was good because my grandmama framed it. Oh. She put it up. Yeah, she put it up in her house. I was in 5th grade. And it was a poetry exercise at my school, which was also a Black Christian school. So same thing, we were learning Maya Angelou and Walcott and Langston Hughes. Like these are just a part of our literature curriculum, alongside scripture and Bible verse and catechism and things like that. So it was a writing exercise in class, and I wrote it, and the teacher thought it was good. And I came home, my grandma thought it was good, and that was, I would say, the first poem I ever wrote. And I was 12, I think. Yeah, that sounds right. 5th grade, 11 or 12.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so did you think you'd be a poet the whole time? Like, is that something?
No.
Yeah.
No.
So what was that journey like? How did you come to as an adult become to be a poet?
Yeah, it's a funny story and a beautiful one at that. I'm going to use that word a lot. But I, as a kid, I wanted to be my mom, basically. I was like, oh, mommy goes to work and like wears a suit and looks important. And people come to her office. So I knew I wanted to do something like that. And then, of course, being preoccupied with, as many people are, like making enough money to survive, being a writer just didn't feel like it was the right path for me. So when I got my second job out of college, my supervisor, Miriam Bernard Amos, still very, very good friends, she was telling me, that she was trying to help me build a career, honestly. She's like, you're going to do research and sponsor programs. You should get your master's degree in it. And I started getting ready to apply for these programs. And I was like, nah, like, this isn't what I want to get my degree in. Like, I want to study writing and I want to study poetry. And she's like, okay, if that's what you want to do, but you need to start making steps toward that. And I thought prior to that, in college and undergrad, I did a lot of personal essay. So that's kind of where I thought I would hang out. But poetry, like I told you, the first poem I wrote was when I was in 5th grade. So I think that always was going to be my home and always was. I just probably spent the majority of my life fighting it, trying to get a quote unquote, sensible career the way that many people are cultured, including myself at the time. And so poetry had a home in me. And then when I had to choose something to study, that's what I wanted to do. And it just has worked out really beautifully, and I don't regret any parts of it. But yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Well, we're so glad you're here doing this. Let's hear another poem.
Sure. I have Crooked Room from the collection as well. I'm gonna go to that. Is profanity okay? Should I?
Yeah,
bleep?
profanity is fine.
Okay.
But what page number?
It's page 18.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. There's no. We put it on the child, not for children. Viewer discretion
Okay.
advised.
Good,
So
good. It's not
yeah.
riddled with it, but it's here. So I
Okay.
just didn't want people to, be offended in that way. This is a Zuhitsu, so a little background on this one. This entire book I consider an extended Zuhitsu. Zuhitsu is a Japanese form of poetry. I think Shai Sonnet him, I think I'm saying her name right, is seen as the mother of this form, where she was a court reporter and took different fragments of the day and some of the things from court and then put them all in this book and hid it in her pillow. Hence the name The Pillow Book, which is what it was called when it was published. And I think there was a film too, but I digress. So what Zuhitsu is a form of poetry that takes fragments of anything. It could be something my mother said, it could be a newspaper headline, and it brings it together. And I think it literally means sweeping brush. So it's less concerned with the subjects and more concerned with the movement through. And I think this is a good one to read so you can feel that movement and experience what this form is capable of with me.
Okay.
Okay, so Crooked Room. When I finally touch you, I won't ever remember holding my breath. These lengths of time, like 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi, 4 M-I, crooked letter I, trace crooked letters down the lining of your jaw. Blue in the face, river clay, your ear ends taste like salt and vinegar, and that's just fine. I still call you Candy, King, and Angel, and Baby Love. We still talk about Fish River Canyon like Namibia's up the street getting redone, like they'll let us in after the reno. And about the ice cream canyon craters and my butter pecan that we can't remember who spoon carved, playing spoons in the dozens with our legs laced together. Yo mama so ugly, Rice Krispies won't talk to her. Yo mama so dumb, she went to the dentist for a Bluetooth. Whose mama gave who what crooked big and second shovel looking toe? Shit, I burned the bacon and you haven't touched my eggs. And Gwendolyn Brooks wrote something about burnt breakfast and bleak ballads of dark villains and milk white maids, and you're already thinking of the Negro Speaks of Rivers and being born by the river. And I'm thinking of Vine's viral version, I was born by the river, I was shaking that ass, and it's been too hard living with nothing but the idea of you. I write these crooked poems with the idea of you when I'm worried about them having the wrong idea of you, so you'll never come home. And from the crooked system cell, you'll write crooked letters, crooked letter I. Find all transit lines lead to the end of the road, and everything can lead to 90s R&B or a musical score trapped in the yellow brick, trapped in the yellow wall paper. Yellow or red boned is something I am not. Cooked marrow is closer to the true color of my skin, so you don't put me in songs or club sonnets, and that's just fine, because I do. And I'm just fine until you reach for my waist, and I'm wondering why you want what doesn't make you sing, why you want Lady in Brown, dark phrases of womanhood, half notes scattered, crooked down across crooked room. Couldn't figure out whose hand was on my thigh, but it didn't matter. I must have wanted it. I was the one who missed the train, who made the dinner, who wore the red silk and the whole smile and the waxed brows and the Nile and the Tigris and the Euphrates and Malaysian curly and the catfish and cheese grits thickness and dark red ribbons in my hair, milk tea on your fingers, the wood burns white all night. You pull in and out of me until I'm plump with love, round enough to eat. If I wasn't so damn fertile crescent-like, I'd be able to stop growing them, to stop producing cash crop kids, more arid good land, to stop looking like good land, like Canaan, like second Eden, like the well and the drain. Delta Stewart has said to count while my gum pops to make this part easy. I think of her with you here, and I start inhale, counting, hunchback, I saw a snake in my Bible between the beginnings. How strange to see it on legs with arms and feet, handing mother a clementine because it was jealous and just mean. I think I saw it in the Pledge of Allegiance. and in the tent meeting, and strung between your hands when you laid them on Lily Blue and told her she'd be forgiven for dancing with Eddie Sherman, when all she was doing was dancing with someone who wants to love her.
And that was Crooked Room, from Alexis V. Jackson's book, My Sister's Country. Can you talk about that concept of the Crooked Room? I think, is that Gwendolyn Brooks? Is that her concept, or did she? Who came for that?
So I was first introduced to it by Melissa Harris Perry, from Sister Citizen. I think that book came out in 2015. I don't want to lie, but yeah, Melissa Harris Perry talks about it. It's based off of a field dependency study that they post World War II field dependency study that they did with folk, where they basically made the room crooked, like literally, and then they put someone in there to see if people would pick up on the fact that it was disoriented, or if they would reorient themselves.
Oh, interesting.
To fit, into the room. And so they found that a lot of people would reorient themselves as much as, I think, like I'm bad at math, but 90 degrees.
yeah, 90.
Yeah, okay. As much as 90 degrees, so bend over sometimes, just so that the room would make sense to them, so that it all looked right.
Oh yeah.
And so reading that in her book, she talks about shame, and how what role shame plays and how Black women see themselves as citizens. And of course, the title of my book coming from that, with My Sister's Country, the idea behind that being Black women, once considered countryless property in America, had to make country within one another. And so the idea of what that does, of course, choosing to and having to make country within one another is the reorientation, right? It is a thing. We don't need to bend over in this way. We are human beings, number one. We are, worthy of citizenship. But yeah, so the Crooked Room comes from that and the idea of this entire book. And I think that's what Black literature and Black women's literature in America has sought to do since its very beginnings, going back to Phyllis Wheatley, right, is reorienting ourselves, saying, no, the room is crooked, it's not us. There's nothing wrong with us. And so that's what I seek to do in this poem. It's the reorientation, specifically in a romantic setting, and discussing all the various ways that romantic love, with a man in particular in this poem, with a Black man, like what that feels like, and the ways that it can be beautiful and is beautiful, but also can feel like a betrayal, and ultimately ending with the idea of what, like a pastor healing someone and forgiving someone for just looking for love, what that can feel like and how isolating that experience can be. So yeah, that's where that concept comes from.
Yeah, it's so interesting how many layers that operates in the book, that sense of like reorienting and reframing and reclaiming, and also through the forms that you use, because you use a lot of forms, but you break them. Like they're not, they're like, I'm going to make this form my own, is how you move through. Are all these things conscious decisions, or is it just stuff that happened organically? Because there's so many elements to it that I mean, they seem like they're intentional. So how much of those kind of things are organic, or is this just the way it's playing out spontaneously?
Yeah, no, I think most poets that I've spoken to and even heard from would agree that it's always both, right? It's once you read enough what's enough, but once you've read enough, I guess, have this in your arsenal, for lack of a better term right now, that kind of stuff can come through, like without you even thinking about it, because you practiced it and read it so much. For me, so I knew I wanted the poems when I was writing this. I knew I wanted them to be a book, but I didn't know which ones were going to make it or not. And I also had a professor tell me, that Lynn Melnick, she had mentioned that we're all writing, the same poem, and she'd heard that somewhere. So all poets are writing the same poem over and over again. We're trying to get at the same thing. So I think it was easy for those to naturally come through, and the poem's going to be what it's going to be. But when it came to forms like the sonnet, the pantoum, this one in particular, the Zuhitsu, I did set out to write them. Like the pantoum in this book actually wasn't initially a pantoum, but the form made the poem make sense, because it was not working before I put it in that form and exploded it. So yeah, I think some of it, definitely poems kind of took a life of their own on, but majority of the forms you see, like even the playlist poem, that was me intentionally doing that. Like I wanted to have the form allow for certain ideas to come through.
Yeah, that interplay is always what's so fascinating about poetry, because in a way, like a poet or a poem is like your own unconscious trying to tell you something, you know.
No,
And so
always.
and it can't get the message across, so it keeps trying in different ways, and then they kind of mingle into some huge creative project, which is just always cool to see. And I think it's very apparent in this book. So if anybody has any questions for Alexis, I'm just a reminder to pass them on in the chat windows, either on Facebook or YouTube, not Twitter. I ignore Twitter. But on Facebook or YouTube, leave any comments, and I will pass them along, or questions, I should say. But let's hear another poem.
Sure. I have It Shouldn't Have to Be True. That's on page 64.
Okay.
And I don't read this one often, so I'm excited to read it today. And this one is called, well, I said that, but it's I can't think of what that's called. But the italics, because of Balaam's donkey, numbers 22, 21 through 39. That's important as a church girl for me to talk about, because I've heard many a Black woman preacher talk about it from the perspective of, so with Balaam's donkey, the idea is, Balaam is trying to go somewhere he shouldn't go. And then God uses the donkey finally to like tell him to speak through him. And I've heard many women, when Black women preachers, when discussing women's ordination, use that particular text to say, well, God can use a donkey. Why couldn't God use a woman? And so this poem is after that, in terms of like thinking about God using a woman to talk and speak about these things, but also what it means to be relentlessly attempting to tell someone something and them refusing to hear you. So it shouldn't have to be true. I do not understand the wind in my chest. The way your control of it moves mountainous regions I miss photographing. Tell me, how did you fashion my tongue? Was there an invisible carving knife lying on my navel with instructions on how to shape my hollow? Telling you to march around me until you got the sound of breaking cypress and the smell of your favorite citrus and the scratch of a coughed up whisper. An angel asked for your blood. I've been telling you, an angel asked for your blood. Beloved, your path is a reckless one. Tell me, how did you fashion my tongue? Let me learn it. In the diner, you tell me my questions about the nature of lust and the source of love and the need for love from Black women are nonsense. In the car, you say my confusion about the body is childlike. In the hallway, you state that I know nothing about what I'm saying about myself, how to shape my hollow, and the scratch of a coughed up whisper, and the smell of your favorite citrus, and the sound of breaking cypress telling you to march around me until. When I was 15 and found the breath to say, you hurt my feelings when you say that, you said, stop girling. Was there an invisible carving knife lying on my navel with instructions on how to shape my hollow? Bodies of African women were translated as a type of data used in the freedom of men. African women were translated as data, type of freedom, bodies used. The way your control of it moves mountainous regions, I miss walking. I love you, 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 I love you. All the wind in my chest and the cypress branch in my throat say so.
That was It Shouldn't Have Been True, again from My Sister's Country. I think it was on the Core Press website that I read an interview with you. We were talking about imposter syndrome and being at which is something I think we can all relate to. For me, being an editor was like, what the hell am I doing? Like, how am I, especially when it's like I'm picking poems from people who are like much more experienced and have been around forever, and I've read their books before I even became, some of the first poets I read. I'm deciding which poems of them are worth publishing, which is strange. And so I think that happens to everybody. But how did that affect you? And why was that an important thought to you?
Oh man, I mean, it's something that I feel, I would say maybe about as recent as 3 months ago, that I've just started to absolutely shake. I think it's real for most people, but yeah, I think like you were saying, Tim, that there's a way that I have so much respect for poetry as a craft.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the idea that I have a book out is like wild to me still. I'm still like, oh my gosh, people wanted to publish my work. But I also think it was part of the trouble I had with even being comfortable putting the work out initially. And I have a poem that I'll read that talks about that, but a little bit. But yeah, just like, who am I? Are people going to find out that I'm like, not Gwendolyn Brooks? Like, and I'm like, no, people already know you're not Gwendolyn Brooks. They're just expecting you to be you, right? But yeah, I think that also was a big part of why I didn't fully embrace poetry as like what I wanted to do with my life for a while, because of course, like, well, if I'm not going to be great, and that's my own little, Sagittarius pressure that I put on myself sometimes, but if it's not going to be amazing, I don't want to do it. And people are going to find out that I'm not amazing at it. And what is that? And I think being a writer means that James Baldwin said this, but being a writer means like you just ultimately like can't do anything else. Like if you would, you could, right? And so ultimately, I think that poetry and the writing just continue to be relentless in chasing after me, and I'm grateful for it because it's always been there. But something inside was just like, yeah, shut up. And I told you what that was, right? When my boss was like, okay, with your life, this is what you're going to go study, and this means and something inside me was like, nah, like there's something else that I really want to do, and I've been putting it off. And I'm grateful that I had that realization at that time. But yeah, even with publishing now, like it's me saying like, no, this work is pretty fire. Like the work is dope in its own way. But that came with a lot of therapy. I'm going to be honest, a lot of therapy. And honestly, also just really, really surrounding myself with artists, like finding good artist community is important, because then it's like, okay, all of us are in the same boat. Like it's not just me by myself feeling this, which then makes it less of a feeling. If we're all, publishing and getting work out and thinking about these things, but we do it anyway, it's like, okay, yeah. It's less of a thing and more of just get over that and do the work and get the work out here to do what it's supposed to do on its own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I always wonder if it seems like I wonder if everybody feels that way and we just get better at hiding it over the years. Like I wonder, if does Patricia Smith feel imposter syndrome? Is that possible still? I mean, I don't know. Or eventually does it go away? We'll have to have her on and ask her. But
let me know what she says. I'll watch when that one comes up. I want to know.
Do you want to read that poem that you mentioned? Whichever about that relates to that.
Oh, yeah. That one is on page 79.
Okay, thanks.
And y'all will hear the imposter syndrome at the bottom, or at the end. I do want to talk about a little bit, help y'all get into it, because I know, readers and viewers are all in different places with what you read and don't read. So a little bit about it. This poem was written after June Jordan's essay, Nobody Mean More to Me Than You, and the Future Life of Willie Jordan. And it's an essay I taught, and I love teaching it. I love teaching June Jordan, period. But I love teaching this essay and her essay, Something Like a Sonnet for Phyllis Wheatley. Every time I can teach it, I will. But in this particular essay, she's with students and they're reading The Color Purple, and they're like, oh, no, like this is not right. Who writes like this? Who talks like this? And she's like, okay, well, let's, these are Black students. And she's like, well, let's talk about this. Let's come up with some rules for language and African-American vernacular English, or AVE. And so they come up with rules for how you should use be. And so this poem is called Rules for Defining Be, in Obedience to June Jordan and Rebellion Against Standard English. I'm going to read it. I be in my head on things sometimes, be right in the middle of something and be thrown right off by my own self on was, could, would, and maybe. I be wondering if I be anybody else, be anywhere else, if be and be different. Be like, Beyonce don't have lungs. Be like, flies just fly. Be like, why I can't just be some rich man's boo? Be folding clothes or be on the phone or be reading and be like, I can't be no bomb for my block or my hood or this school or this world or some man or people I only read about. Then I'll be having to stop myself because I'll be forgetting to finish what I'm doing. Be forgetting to be where I'm at. It be getting bad though. Walked into class and was thinking, been waiting on walking in here and being me. Been wanting to walk down the street in Harlem and in Philly without being pressed up on. Be yawning and they be like, baby girl, you be needing to be in bed earlier. Been writing this poem and been thinking about my man and been wanting to not worry. Been wanting to not be so hard with him when he be wearing his hood up. It do be cold, but he mine. And I be needing to believe that we be all right where we be. And I be so mad that I can't be mad. And I be listening to that Solange song, but it don't be working sometimes. I've been in my feelings on these things off and on, be wondering why I gotta be so wrong and be working so hard to be so right. And I ain't never gonna be right because it ain't never gonna be right. So why I'm reading all this Jordan and Shakespeare and Smitherman and Plath and theology and poetics and news? Why I'm doing all this school? Why I be wanting to make more people to be where I be and they ain't gonna be able to be breathing without grieving. I be wanting to put this out and be wanting to feel right doing it. It just ain't right. Or I be something I can't be right now. So I can't be having people reading this being all confused about how poetic, how genius, how well schooled I really be. I be thinking too much, was thinking too much. Be having to say, girl, stop. You be too much. This be what it is. This be enough.
Yeah, I love that. I'm glad you read it. It's one of my favorite in the book.
Well, thank you.
And again, that is Rules for Defining B from My Sister's Country. And I was wondering, too, as I was reading the book, where do you think poetry lives? Because your poems both play a lot with the page and the layout on paper, but they also have so many voices collaging in with song lyrics and things like that. And it seems like great, like, performance-type poetry. How do you, where do you think of your how do you think of like your audience consuming your poetry? Do you think of it listening, or do you think of it as the page, or both? How does that interplay as you're writing a poem?
Yeah, I'm thinking of, well, I haven't started yet, but I guess in my brain, I'm writing a craft essay on these kinds of things. But yeah, with print, I understand that my reader is gonna be reading it. So I do think of it as that. My hope is that they attempt to read them out loud, so that they also can get the sonic quality there. But what I think the beauty of poetry is that because, it is metered, and language in general, right? Mostly iambic pentameter, right? But yeah, it is metered. So there is, even without having it change the sonic environment, there is still a way to read it that you can get the cadence and you can understand it. And I think, Black readers from my experience also will be able to like lean into a lot of that and have access to it a lot easier, I think. But like you said, I think reading it, and I've had many people tell me that the poems broke open for them in a different way after hearing me read them. Mm-hmm. So I think that the performance of language on the page is where the poems live, mm-hmm. but they also definitely live in my mouth and in the performance of me like reading them. And I love that about my work. I think I'm very aware of the fact that when I read, and I think all poets, I mean, I could even say Patricia Smith, right? Hearing her read as a like slam poet and a performance poet as well, right? Reading her books, and then also like listening to her, there's a similar experience, but also a very different experience, mm-hmm. right? Yeah. And the poems live in both places. So I think a poet is aware of the way that the reader will interact with it. And always understanding their audience, but very much so, I know that there's a performed quality to these that works really well.
Yeah, it's just it's an interesting thing because we had nothing but the oral tradition for 300 or 30,000 years or however long, and then we had the printing press, and all of a sudden we had books, and we had a written tradition, and and that was like the easiest way to disseminate things. And now we're back to stuff like this, where we can just hear you read your poems, and we don't need to have the book. And I mentioned I was at a literary or arts festival yesterday. And, walking by the booth, nobody cared about the books, but then when we had a poetry slam at night, it was like a packed house and everybody loved it. Like couldn't be more stark because it was like, oh, these are poetry books. Okay. See ya. But then when people were actually like being human beings performing them, it's just everything came to life for an audience. And so it just, as much as I love books and I feel like almost worried that this kind of experience, which is great, it might take away from the book experience. Like books might be an accessory to reading rather than the other way, or performing rather than the other way around. So I don't know. It's just something I've been thinking about and trying to. Since doing these podcasts, which are like my favorite thing to do. I love hearing poets read their own work. It's great, but then it almost makes the book like why do we need the book? And I hate that thought. So
Yeah, I mean, I think, and that's interesting. Yeah, I think so there it's weird, right? And I haven't really thought too much about it, but even studying the tradition of poetry, like you were just saying, and of course orally, even outside of any European context as well, like poetry was living and breathing without written text. But there's also, like I said, Black arts movement I'm heavily influenced by. So, there were albums like Gil Scott Heron and Nikki Giovanni, and they had like poetry albums, Jane Cortez, The Fire Spitters. And I think, like you're saying, I think more people, and unfortunately, I think it is the way that we've been cultured and even our academic system, right? Where people are more comfortable listening to poetry than they are reading it. It seems scary and heady and like that's for like really smart people. And I think in the ways that it can be made accessible, it's helpful. But for those who love the page and like to read it and study it and care about line breaks, I think the books are always going to be there. But yeah, I think the spoken word does reach a broader audience because it's less scary for people. And I don't know, I think in some ways, hopefully we can pull them together to make it less scary so they want to buy the book too, right? But yeah, I'll have to think about that. Thanks for giving me something to chew on.
Let's see. So I think I want to talk a little bit more about your just writing process. We haven't mentioned that. Like, how do you, if do you write frequently? Do you revise a lot? Do you, do you wait for inspiration? Does something spark you? How does your writing process? How does a poem come to be?
Yeah, see, listen. So what people don't talk about enough, I wish they had. This is, shout out to all those MFAers doing it. It is a weird experience leaving the MFA and trying to get a writing process together. So of course, like during the MFA, Masters of Fine Arts, 2 years, that's what I'm doing. Like I'm living, breathing, writing all the time. Like something happens, I don't know, TV show, I can write. Like I'm just there and I'm in it. And that's what when most of this book was written. And I'm writing for a workshop, I'm writing for myself. I'm just literally eating, sleeping, breathing poetry. And so my process was much different then than it is now that I have a 9-to-5 and I, have a life that I'm married and I take out the trash and I'm, cooking and like doing all these things and, finding ways to be present with my partner as well, because he has a demanding schedule. So the process has been different. I will say like Peggy Robles Alvarado has been a really big part of my writing process. She's doing a lot with Robles Rights and Women in Creative Rebellion, like all these things. And so I've gone to, and that's unfortunately, but fortunately, what COVID has brought us, right, is the ability to connect with people through Zoom and all these other things. So most of my community, I live in San Diego, is still in New York, and that's where Peggy's based. But she was having these free workshops. She's like, come through, like, come talk to people. And so I have writing groups there, like people I check in with bi-weekly. So shout out to Ray Jane, Amanda, Miki, Maria, but we all meet regularly, like every other week. And it's just sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it's 2 hours, sometimes it's 20 minutes, whatever we can do. And sometimes we're not talking about poetry at all, but staying connected to that community has been really important to me. And so my process has honestly been since the MFA experience. I wake up early and I do the morning pages from Julia Cameron. I will say I'm that person, but it's been so helpful. And then I set aside time once a week to be accountable so that even if, I come with just one poem, when I come to talk to my community on Zoom, I have something. And we might not even touch the poem, but I've done something that I can, say I'm bringing to the space and honoring that all of us have decided we're going to keep each other accountable. So I mostly, after the morning pages, I write poems because I have time to, and that is like 4:35 a.m. Like I get up and I get it done. And then Other times, because of the particular project book I'm in now, and it's on Black women saints, and I'm going to be working in persona, which is a new form for me. Other times I have to set aside time for research because I have to get into the space of like who this person is and actually, in a lot of ways, conjuring them, for lack of a better term, right? Like, who were you as a person? And that takes a lot of time to like be in that space to then get the poem out. So that's my current process, but I feel like the best thing about understanding process for me is it has been leaning into the truth that poetry will always be for me. Mm-hmm. So no matter what my schedule is, I just have to figure out when it will be, but it will always be. And it doesn't have to happen like the MFA, because I went through a little depression where I thought like I was failing as a writer. Like, I'm not writing every day. I don't have 5 poems a week, like written, like what's wrong with me? And that's just not my reality now. And it's still there and it's still amazing. And Lucille Clifton had a bunch of kids and wrote a lot of poems. So I'm in good company is what I try to tell myself, like it's doable. So I hope that answered your question. I feel like
it definitely does. And it's interesting. It's something that hasn't really come up, I don't think, on the show before. But if you have been through an MFA program, there is, I think, maybe a universal depression afterward. Because
yeah,
it's
everybody
such
I know.
Like when people ask me if they should go to an MFA, I always say if you can afford it or they pay, because it's an amazing experience just to be able to have, deadlines every week and to be so focused on writing. It's just so fun. I mean, it's like a artist retreat, but for the entire 2 years you're doing it. It's amazing. And then you go back to the real world and you're like, oh, I don't have time for anything, and no one cares.
Yep. No, and, both of those feelings.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we have time for, I think, 2 more poems probably. So do you want to do your second to last one, and then we'll see if we have any questions from the audience.
Sure. I'm gonna do. Let's do one that's not in the book as well. I've never read this publicly, so I'm really excited that you're giving me the opportunity to do this, Tim. Excuse me. It's More True Than It Hurts. It's the one of the 2 that was in Poetry Magazine, and I've just never read it, but it fits within the themes of my sister's country. And honestly, if I had written it when I was writing these, it would be in the book. It's just a good one to read with these other pieces. It's more true than it hurts. Whereas for some, it was a shoe or a slipper or a switch or a hanger or an extension cord. Whereas for me, it was a belt or a wide open palm that preserved me, kept me unspoiled and humble. Whereas my mother can only recall being held by the throat once when sneaking in after curfew. My satin-robed grandmother waiting in the vestibule, my mother's tiny body exalted and pressed against the floral wallpaper. Whereas my grandmother's fear will never cause more trauma than a sore throat and a long myth. Whereas what happens to a Black girl child who doesn't come home or does stay out too late in 1976? Whereas for my mother, what happens to a Black girl child who is beautiful and quiet and free, where the world is unlovely and expensive? Whereas one of them sat 4 desks over from a girl who left school 11 and pregnant. Whereas my grandmother has 1 daughter and my mother 3, and there are no sons, just scared, solemn-faced fathers. Whereas I have never levitated or skipped school or been pregnant or known the slap of anyone with whom I did not share a name. So is protection the thing they gave me to cry for? Am I more well acquainted with obedience or happiness? Whereas they are the same victim. Whereas I know well the fear of God, it brought me into this realm out of spite and uses everything it can reach to keep anything from taking me out of it.
Yeah, and that was It's More True Than It Hurts from Poetry's December 2021 issue. So what was it like getting a first acceptance to Poetry Magazine? That's like some dream that most people don't get to experience. Did you flip out?
I did. I was just like, it's coming together for me. That's how I felt. Like I genuinely, like I said, and you mentioned it, the post MFA mini depression. I don't know if mini like works well there, but it's real for a lot of artists, myself included. And I think trying to just, I spent a year, and I know that doesn't seem like a lot of time. 2 years, I think, trying to like just submitting the book out and not getting anything and wondering like, what am I doing? Did I waste money? What's happening? So I think when Erica Hunt selected the book, for which I'm eternally grateful, and I started getting, publications started to come in, I was like, okay, this feels right. Like, this is what it's supposed to be. And then Poetry Magazine, of course, and the Ruth Lilly. And I'm like over the moon excited because this is, in my view, I have 2 careers. My sponsored programs work as a research administrator and this writing career. And both of them, one is feeding me right now, while the other is what I would choose to do with my life because I know I can't do anything else. And so being accepted into Poetry Magazine, also like honestly, also being accepted into Rattle, I'm like, yes, okay, like I'm doing something right. It's coming to be the way it should. And I'm really happy that they selected the poems they did because I'm very, very proud of these pieces as well.
So I thought you were adjuncting. So you're working as a, what did you say, research
administrator? Yes.
What does that mean?
Yeah, I was adjuncting, but San Diego got expensive. And honestly, I think people don't talk enough about the importance of choosing. So one of my mentors had mentioned that a career that won't allow you to write is one you can't have. And ironically, while people will be like, oh, you're teaching, of course, like that you're living, eating, and breathing writing. And it's like, no, I actually had less time to write because I was so concerned with picking up extra classes and trying to make it work in a very, very expensive, very, very expensive
don't you have to tell
county.
me.
Yeah.
We moved out to the middle of nowhere, so we wouldn't have to, pay.
Yeah. It's just like it doesn't work. So research and sponsored programs is what I was doing when I had that boss who was like, you gotta do something. And I was doing that work at Lincoln University. And now I'm doing that work at UCSD, University of California, San Diego. But in essence, I am doing the clinical trials portion of it. So what that means is I review agreements and CDAs, which is like non-disclosure agreements between the university. I work in pediatrics, so the university and the sponsor, and decide, so CDAs, what else? Agreements, so CTA contracts. I basically, long story short, I review contracts from sponsors on clinical trials, and I talk to the PI, so these doctors, these really important scientists, and their study teams and nurses, and decide if these are studies we can do and if we can get them funded. And I carry them through that process of funding and making sure that we reconcile budgets and such. So I do a lot of reading, but I'm reading a lot of documents that are sciencey and looking for budget information and then creating these budgets.
Yeah, I think that's something that's not talked about enough. Is it how draining it is to be either a teacher or an editor? The dream is to like have a job where you're doing poetry all the time, but then it's hard to do your own poetry. It's exhausting, and it's a weird way that we like train to be kind of poets through these programs, and then we go off and be and we're drained of the ability to do, and so having a job that's somewhere else that uses a different part of your brain, so then that it can be like exciting when you get home and you're using the creative part of your brain. It's something that I think it's a great track to take, so it's really good to see. I think it'd probably be much more productive than if you had to teach every day, like 6 courses a semester or whatever.
Yeah, and I think ultimately for me, I mean, yes, less exhausting in certain ways, more exhausting in other ways. But I think it was honestly for me, and different people are wired differently. For me, it was honestly the stress about money. So yeah, I have to pick up an extra class and take more time. And mind you, I'm teaching writing intensive courses. So it's not like I'm preparing the lecture and we're done. Now I have like 60 papers to read and grade. And also like 40 poems to look over. And it just, it became exhausting. But I had to do it. And I also, I guess I'm speaking for adjuncts in this way, but we also we don't get paid for the summers. So if you don't have something else lined up, you got to figure out another job. And there's the truth that you don't get paid for the time you're prepping for the course, and also the time after the semester's over, if you're still wrapping up grades or meeting with students, or like if you're an invested teacher like I am, like some of my students who graduated have my phone number and they're publishing poems, and I'm so proud of them. But that all is not work I'm compensated for.
Yeah.
And it just was like, I couldn't do it. I mean, now maybe living in another city, because we're looking at, what possibilities there are if San Diego continues to, gas is like $20 a gallon, it feels like. But yeah, I think moving somewhere else, maybe it will work, but San Diego was too much.
Well, we had a whole issue of adjunct poets, issue 53, I think it was, and it was depressing. I mean, it was just, I felt so bad for all the stories in the back, and I mean, just how hard that piecing together. Some people are going to 4 different colleges, and commuting to each one, picking up 2 courses here, like so much workload just to make ends meet. It's really an exploitative practice that we're doing, in the academic institutions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the thing is, departments couldn't function without adjuncts.
Right?
Yeah. Not really appreciated as such, because somebody takes sabbatical and nobody wants to take their classes or can. And oftentimes a lot of departments don't have poets. So, or they only have 1 or 2. So if a poet leaves, then you have to use the adjunct poet to teach those classes, and nobody else can. And they're appreciative, but not compensated,
Yeah. Well, I feel like saying congratulations for getting out early. Everybody I know who's left it is just happy or doing other things. Like I know somebody who went and is doing they're writing like manuals for the Army or something, and it's so, she's so much happier there. Like people actually appreciate her, and and she has a set time, and then can write and do other things other times. I don't know. So it's tough. It's a tough setup. Hey, we're about out of time, so let's do the last poem that you want to share.
Yeah. I read the last poem earlier, which was B. So I'm going to do My Sister's Country.
The title poem, yeah.
Yeah, we can do that one.
It's 23 if you're looking at it. I found that one first.
Yeah, I was like, wait, what? Okay. I had them all marked, and then I think I undog-eared them. So My Sister's Country, page 23. Thank you, Tim. And this poem explores the way that when I was conceiving of country, in terms of in my life when it started, outside of course claiming my mother's body as a fetus, this poem is exploring the ways that I saw as creating country, like in my grandmother's kitchen. So it is a confessional poem in that way. My Sister's Country. In the moments after his mania, I pick eggshell shrapnel out of my sister's eyes and ears and memories in my grandmother's kitchen. We hard-boil hearts and devil them, room temperature, bite-sized servings that put the meat back on our bellies, that keep us possible. We crack open the calabash and cleanse with proverbs and the fantastic about the women before the women before the women before us, who homed with the men before the men before the men before him. My mother compares her recipes to the myths. My grandmother ices our feet. My sisters count their scars. I watch. My mother leads them back to our home, to their rooms, to him, to a fresh dozen. I follow. I am wondering why we leave my grandmother's kitchen, why we leave holding each other to hold cold yolk and white, to sweep up the aborted chicken fetus cocoon pieces for atomic warhead him. Why I leave watching for warring. We hear our mother try a different way of whisking. We hear him plead Black American man hypermasculinityenza for war crimes. My mother forgives without promise of reparation. My sisters build a country in me. I build a country in my grandmother's kitchen. Here, the women have callous feet and nimble fingers. Here, it is criminal for men to make breakfast. Here, Mars wears red nail polish and the scent of white diamonds. And I watch her watch me spoil.
Again, that was the title poem to My Sister's Country. Alexis V. Jackson, thanks so much for being a guest. It was a pleasure talking to you and sharing this beautiful book of yours with everybody. I appreciate you being here.
Appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me, Tim.
Yeah, take care.
You too.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break and go to the open lines now. The prompt for this week was to write about your earliest memory So get those poems ready. But in the meantime, visit Alexis V. Jackson's website. You can find it at Alexis V. Jackson, just like it is on the title here on the book, alexisvjackson.com. So check out the website, My Sister's Country, available from Core Press Institute, and hope you'll pick up a copy. Now, how to do the open lines. So email your poem first to openmic@rattle.com. That's openmic@rattle.com. Then I'm going to get the Zoom link and paste it in. If I can find it. How do I do that? I always forget. Here it is, the Zoom link. So I'm going to paste the Zoom link into the chat windows on Facebook and YouTube. I'll pin them to the top so that you can see them. And then join us if you would like to share a poem. Only join while you're, read a poem, then come back to the regular stream so you can read along with poems too. So if you'd like to share a poem, jump over to the Zoom. You have the links right here now. And join us and share. So I'm going to take a quick break. We will be right back in just a few minutes, or a few seconds, I guess I should say. See you soon. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. As I mentioned, if you would like to share a poem, it's open mic. That's openmic.com. Email the poem there, and then find the Zoom link and join us on Zoom to share it. I think we could do, if you have two poems, if you happen to have two poems this week, feel free to share two. I think we have plenty of time. We don't have a second guest or a third guest. And I'm not rushing out terribly fast. So it's a 2-poem day if you would like. And let's go first to Mike Bales. He's right up here. Let's see.
Hello, how's it going?
Good. How you doing, Mike?
Pretty good. You asked for background information, that URL information always on the submission thing. In lieu of having a website, I posted this interview of me that was posted on Poetic Bloomings.
Mm-hmm.
That's the background information. The poem I wrote was, I listened to a thing called, I listened to this web, On Being by Krista Tibbett.
Oh, yeah.
And she said a neat way of talking about how plants are intelligent living things. She's done this more than once. I might have even submitted a poem based on her one time before, but this is based on something that came back up last week about a botanist, and she's talking about things being beautiful, and her lead professor is telling her she ought to be an artist instead.
Oh.
So I wrote that poem in subtext of things. I'm revising it slightly at the end here.
Okay. Well, why don't you go ahead? I have it.
Okay. In subtext of things, A botanist sees the beauty in a preponderance of yellow pressed against violet in a field. Her professor says she ought to be an artist. He tells her to avoid calling each plant by name and make each a subject so it can be measured. The subject says to call each plant it or by species name. She says she can feel each one's pain. Yet unobserved bees outdoors, attracted by the colors, pollinate more. A field in bloom reaches for the sun. Moss without name clings to rock, and in time it turns to sand without notice, unhypothesized. Yet the student asks for a kinder world, a deeper level of understanding, of life objectified and sharded. Each weekend she stands barefoot in a field of clover she holds dear, as a breeze speaks to her, a whisper, a soft cry, a greater calling she hears.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that, Mike. That was in the subtext of things, the title I have. What did you call it? You called it something else, right?
In subtext of things, I got the name right this time. Last time I threw you because I didn't get the title right. That's the title. It was the thing I submitted to Poets Respond this week.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing, Mike. Always a pleasure. Love your work.
Okay, thanks.
Yep, take care. I was trying to think of what I forgot to mention, and what I forgot to mention is that you can send poems about anything you want. So you can do news poems, you can do the prompt poem, you can do poems that you've published recently and you're proud of. We can just share the link, which is always fun. So email that to openmic@rattle.com. Sorry, I'm tired today. It was a late night last night. Let's go to Stephen Croft.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Stephen. How you doing? Is this your first time on, or have you been on before? I couldn't remember.
No, I've been on before.
Okay.
A couple times before.
Good. Well, good to see you again. So what do you have for us?
This is a poem about Ukraine, and I wrote this for Poets Respond, but wrote it on Tuesday and thought I would try the New Verse News first because they usually get back in a couple days. Well, I was successful there, but I was working up a contributor's note for Poets Respond, and this was part of it. Kalish Orchestra was surely the world favorite when it won the Eurovision Song Contest over the weekend. I was particularly struck by the official video for the song, released a few hours after they won. So that had a lot to do with the poem. I was also bouncing it off of the sort of chestnut by Heraclitus that is always mentioned when journalists and even academics write about war. Mm-hmm. So this poem is called Let Peace Be the Mother of Everything. War is the father of all things, Heraclitus. From the internet, I read about the bombardment of Barcelona by Italians, Germans in 1938. Watch the movie-tone footage of children running, the torn arm of a father's tweed jacket dark with blood, even in the film's black and white. Omen, prelude of what would come. Today, Germans, Italians, the rest of us condemn the bomb's carnage in Kharkiv, Kyiv, Mariupol. The UN was founded in 1945 to prevent world war and make the world better. A gradualism powered by hope, a world where the center will held by our civilized will, forged from what we all want and what we know we did wrong. But those bomb-melted multi-story wrecks of buildings in the gritty, jumping newsreel are grimly colored in today in Kharkiv, Kyiv, Mariupol. War could never be a mother, not that she couldn't cradle a rifle as easily as a baby, plant a garden of minds, but motherhood is too likely to want the peace to nurture children, is too ready to negotiate, to drop the aim of a final strike on the wounded, seeing her own sons and daughters in them, their mother's pain. Even if she starts small, like an opening bud in spring, Compassion could start at a steel plant in Mariupol, where bloody bandaged men are being stretchered out to buses today on CNN. Negotiation could spread to Kharkiv, Kyiv, Kherson, Luhansk, Mykolaiv. Peace could become a warm-bedded garden, now the mother of everything.
Yeah, excellent poem. I'm glad I found a home in New Verse News. You can find that at newversenews.blogspot.com, and they're just a great resource. If people haven't visited there, please do. It's another parallel pose respond type place, but they publish more frequently, which is really good. And also, you can watch this video of the Kalash Orchestra, which I know better than the play because I'll get they put ads on your show if you play stuff like that. But go check it out. I'm sure it's great. Thanks for sharing that, Steve.
Well, I've got one more if there's time.
Yeah, sure. What else?
Okay. And hopefully you got it. This one is June 4, 1937. And you have that one?
Did you email it or should I look it up?
I emailed it.
Okay, let me see.
It's at the bottom of a series of poems by me.
Okay, I think I see it here. From Synchronized Chaos?
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yep, I got it. Mm-hmm.
All right. And I've even though I didn't send this to you, I've got a sort of contributor note I just wrote up. I take comfort that even though war can kill people, poets too, Lorca, Wilfred Owen, it can't kill art, which is one of the best things inside of us. And this is June 4, 1937. Picasso adds the last thing to Guernica, a light bulb gives unity to chaos. Bodies bend and bruise, rack and burn, scream at the sky, sword broken, baby dead, arms outstretched. The highest figure, the bull, still on its feet, tail floating like Luftwaffe in the sky above. People forever trampled in firebomb winds of shrapnel, Basque victims of other people's wars. A light stays on forever, lest we forget.
Yeah, excellent. June 4th, 1937. And this is from a journal called Synchronized Chaos. Do you know anything? Is there anything you can tell us about that? I'm not familiar with it.
About Synchronized Chaos?
Yeah.
Yeah, they've been publishing the first of the month traditionally. In the last couple months, they've also published in the middle of the month. So it actually comes out twice a month. And in fact, in the current issue, I have a book review by a friend of mine. It's a novel called Lakewood, and he is the editor of the James Dickey Review.
Oh, okay.
And if anybody goes to Synchronized Chaos and looks at my review, which I recommend it because of Bill's novel, if you scroll down, you'll see that he's an interviewer, not only on par with you, but possibly Tim better. So
well, he's been around a little longer.
Yeah, just take a look at it, and if you can.
Yeah, well, great. And that's at Sync Chaos. It's SYNCH chaos.com, syncchaos.com. Yeah, thanks for sharing those. I always love seeing new journals. It's fun I'll check this out later. Yeah, thanks.
Okay,
Liz.
thank you.
Yep. All right, and let's go next to, actually, I'm going to there's a bunch of people in the waiting room. I'll have to admit everybody there. Let's go to Dick Westheimer next. Hey, Dick, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Glad you got a great weekend I hope you had good weather for your...
Oh, well, we always do. I mean, it doesn't rain. The last time it rains up here where we are is like May 1st, and it won't rain again, which is a problem toward the end of the summer. But every day is beautiful. And it was 65, which I thought was going to be a little cool, especially for like people coming up from LA. But with the sun, it was just beautiful. I'm glad it was a little cooler because we had a great time. Just hanging out at the booth, watching people walk by uninterested in poetry. but the slam was super fun.
The thing you said about spoken word or spoken poetry or, poetry readings. For me, I love the combination. One of the reasons why I show up to everything you do is because you always have the poet speaking and the text, and those things combined together really make the poetic experience for me.
Yeah, I think it's ideal too. I love being able to do, hear it and read it at the same time. It's just you get to everything all at once, which is the best.
Yeah. Um, well, if there still is time, I would read two. I'd read Man the Namer versus the Unexplained, which was a Poets Respond
Hmm.
poem about the hearings about um, unidentified aerial phenomena,
Uh-huh.
um, which
Are
I
you a
don't know.
believer?
Well, that's the interesting thing. I had a lot of difficulty finding my way out of this poem
Hmm.
because I was predisposed to not being a believer.
Yeah.
And so, like, I sat with the poem sort of three-quarters of the way finished because you just can't write to an end of a poem if you already have a preconceived idea. So I kept, rereading it. And I think I came to the poem probably needs work, but
Hmm.
I think I found a way out that wasn't predictable if you knew me before I started writing the poem.
Interesting. Perfect. Well, let's hear it. This is Man the Namer versus the Unexplained.
And the epigraph is from Ursula Le Guin, A Wizard of Earthsea, My Name and Yours, and the True Name of the Sun, or a spring of water, or an unborn child, are all syllables of the great word that is slowly spoken by the shining of stars. There is no other power, no other name. In the beginning, the God began with naming heaven and earth, light and darkness, water and sky. But the God tired of this work. There were so many creatures that swarmed the land and sea and filled the air above. After little thought, the God created a being he called man and said to him, "These things I've brought forth need names, and whatever you name, you shall have dominion over." And the man rubbed his new formed hands together and beheld the naked form before him and named her Woman, though she proclaimed she didn't want a name. And without being asked, laid his hands on her bareness. Then he turned his attention to the forests and fields and said cow, which he milked, and sheep, which he shore, and deer, which he hunted, and ox, which he yoked, and tiger, which he feared. The flying things he identified by feather and song, goldfinch and blue jay, chickadee, he said, and then bobwhite and loon, whose croon made him weep, and crow whose caw secretly mocked him. And it was good, where it should have been, but man was running out of names and lost patience with this game. He forgot the names he once knew. Instead of warbler and wren, all he remembered was bird. Venus and Vega became star. Cirrus and Cumulus became cloud. He even forgot the stories about such things, of the great sojourns across the sky, of the hammer-struck lightning and quothing ravens, and coyotes who howled the world into being. And at last the man could only name the things he made: computer, car, mortar, war, the machines and screens between him and the things given him, like the sea and sky and swarming creatures. So, when the aliens came in their saucers and glowing discs, the man named man could not see and did not believe. He named the people who saw such things kooks, made movie spoofs, told arch jokes on late night TV. He called the flying things unexplained, which was a curse for what man the namer could not explain, he could not own, and not owning is the worst that the naming man can suffer.
Oh, yeah, very interesting. I love the way where you went with that. Very surprising, as you say. I'm not a believer myself either. I find the new ones just especially poor evidence. I mean, they're very blatantly, in my opinion, not anything. But
Well, and the thing that got me at these hearings were sort of justifications for further expense, further defense measures to
mhm.
be aware of them. That was sort of the tip off that these were for reasons other than just like sharing the news.
Yeah, well, the original UFO stuff was all Cold War propaganda, and actually, I felt like that was the first, or one of the first signs that the Cold War was coming back, was that the UFOs came back. So I think we're gonna do a lot with drones, and I think that's what it is: cover and messing with the other side.
Yeah. Art Bell would disagree with you, but
he would. I love Art Bell, but I don't believe any of that stuff. But I love the show. I still listen to the old podcasts sometimes, or not. They're not podcasts. They're actually a radio show. It was before podcasts. But so the other one is The Blue Boat in the Deep Green Sea, and this should be your earliest memory, right?
Yes, which for me they're not a lot. So this is a figment, or sort of, this is a phantasm almost. The Blue Boat in the Deep Green Sea. The last time I sailed with my dad, as soon as we got out of sight of land, he shed his life jacket and stuffed it under the sunfish's footwell. Your mother, he said, would be mad. Good reason, I thought. He was a dying man with shaky hands, and I'd never learned how to sail. The wind was offshore, and the chop kept washing over the bow of the tiny craft. I thought about the only other time, a dream perhaps. I was a little boy, huddled in the hold of his wooden sloop-rigged swallowtail. The sea seemed mean, a frothy green. The sail's spruce boom was stalking me. He never once handed off the tiller or had me haul on the sheet. Other than that, he was a good dad.
Yeah, excellent. I love that too. The Blue Boat in the Deep Green Sea. Thanks for sharing that. Always a pleasure, Dick.
Yeah, thank you, Tim.
Okay, now let's go to Nivedita.
Hello.
Hey, Nivi, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you. How about you?
I'm doing great. It's fun to kind of be back to normal after a long week of events and planning and promoting. It's nice to just have regular poetry stuff going on. So what do you have for us today?
Something different for a change. I did not get to do the prompt poem.
Uh-huh.
But I sort of got back to my old habit of funny news stories.
Oh, great. Let me try to find it. Did you email or submit that?
Email.
Okay, let me... Oh, okay, I see. So this is... I'll pull up the story. This is a viral video. Dog helps monkey steal a packet of chips from a shop. And again, I can't show the video, so you're going to have to find it, because they have this new thing where people own the rights to these videos, and then they put their own tags underneath, which is, I mean, I guess I understand, like, there is intellectual property. Hopefully the people who took the video got some of the money. I don't know if they did, but somehow someone's got the copyright to all this stuff now, and YouTube and Facebook can all recognize it. So you can't play stuff in anymore if you want your show to be ad free. But anyway, so explain this. Dog helps monkey steal a packet of chips from shop, which is here.
So basically the dog is standing on all fours and the monkey is sort of clinging onto the dog's back and just reaches up and grabs the lowest hanging bag of chips, and both just scuttle away.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch that later, because that is a perfect yeah, that sounds like a perfect teamwork going on there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's hear the poem.
Teamwork makes the dream work. This is not the most unusual pair of friends you may see, but it is certainly one to envy. For a shared love brought them together, and now they're ready to face any stormy weather, to grab that one elusive bag of chips and flee. Teamwork makes the dream work, especially so when it comes to a bag of chips, and you won't believe the smirks once they had that elusive bag in their grip. Then they pranced away on all fours, the monkey high up on a tree, and the dog behind a pair of huge wooden doors, to enjoy their treat away from the prying eyes of everybody.
Excellent. Yeah, I can't wait to watch this video. And you can find that at ndtv.com, and just type in viral video, dog helps monkey steal a packet of chips from a shop. But thanks as always for sharing that, Nivi. It's always fun.
Yeah. I mean, Richard's poem was sort of about names, as was Stephen's. And talking off, an article that I read before this was also to do with names, and I was stuck between the two. And that one I think you may find interesting, Tim. It's about how researchers, I think from New Zealand, sort of went through studies from 2000 to now and found that parasitic worms are named mostly after male scientists and not female scientists. And the tagline was something like, parasitic worms get sucked into the gender bias debate or something
Oh,
like that.
interesting. Yeah. Oh, I think I saw that actually. I think I saw the headline. Yeah.
I like to play on words, and I think the article is very interesting as well.
Interesting.
But
Yeah,
then,
I'll have to find that too. Yeah. Yeah. Thanks, Nibby. Yeah. Thanks. Always a pleasure.
Thank you, Tim. Have a great day.
Yeah. You too.
Thank you.
Hey, bear with me for 1 second. I'm gonna put up the screen again, and I just realized that my text. I keep seeing text messages. It's because I never checked out of the Airbnb. I gotta do that. They're gonna charge me extra. Let's see. So, yeah, that's totally what it is. So, well, I'll cut this out of the podcast version of the show, but I had guests, the poets that were coming to the festival, staying in an Airbnb, and I didn't check them out. So they're like, "We'll charge you an extra day if you don't check out." So this is compelling drama on the Rattlecast, but I have to get the Airbnb app open and then check these people out. I assume they actually left. Okay. So, how do you even do it? Good evening. Let's see. Please check out. See, I don't use this. Fill out the checkout sheet. Where's the button? Okay. There we go. Okay, so hopefully they're not going to charge me an extra day. Let's go to Aubrey.
Hello, everybody.
Hey, Audrey, how you doing?
Really good. Very happy to be here. Erin Murphy was fabulous when she was on Rattlecast, and I was very inspired by her. Missed the following week, so I couldn't read my demi-sonnet.
Excellent. Yeah, I love this form. It's really fun to write.
Me too. So I want to read that now. And here we go.
Okay.
If all conundrums could be solved in the systematic way I attack a Wordle anagram, I would know why my mother was insidious and crept like poison ivy, or the patient copperhead camouflaged in the pine straw of the garden beds before a forked tongue escaped her yawning jaws.
Oh, that's excellent. And so that form, we have the straw and jaws rhyme, which is the way that circles through the demi-sonnet form. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Audrey. That was great.
I have one other. I didn't email it to you, but one of my first memories, if I could read that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Violets. I wish I could say I was forgiving. Forgiveness is the fragrance that the violet sheds on the heel that has crushed it, wrote Mark Twain. But my wounds don't so neatly mesh. They form keloids that grow larger than the wound, ropey reminders of pain, braids of violet stems, all perfume dissipated. So, Mrs. Garth, I'll never forget my kindergarten year, sitting in the bad chair for asking another 5-year-old her name on the first day of school. If there are violets on your grave, they stink. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Great first memory. Thanks for sharing that, Audrey.
I was almost a kindergarten dropout. It's amazing I became an educator.
Excellent. That's great. Well, I'm glad you did. Thanks for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Okay, and let's go to Andrew Tredinick.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Andrew. How you doing today?
Great. Yeah, thanks as always for great guest. It's like being at your Rattlecast is like being at being in a course where there's constant guest lecturers and stuff. It's so good.
Well, that's how it is for me too. I get to hear people's insights and thoughts. I just love it. It's so fun.
it's just, yeah, infinite amount of learning. So thank you. I sent a childhood memory.
Yeah, can't shake off the feeling.
And I teach theory of knowledge as part of the International Baccalaureate course that we teach at our school. And we often talk about memory. So that thing of that sort of asking students what their earliest memory is, is something I've done in classes. And of course, this poem is about that. So, can't shake off the feeling. And I've got a reference to Wendell Berry. I'm an ignorant pilgrim crossing a dark valley, and yet for a long time, looking back, I've been unable to shake off the feeling that I've been led. Make of that what you will. It's not so much the earliest memory itself, you see, but it's that they thought it was weird. Mr. Tread, is it true that you remember being born? With a suppressed guffaw somewhere in the room. I'm learning to be a bit hesitant now. The rumor's gone around. And one student said, you can't have memories until the hippocampus or some other brain structure or other is formed. And that doesn't happen until week whatever. Well, you can't argue with a high school psych textbook. So you go a bit equivocal, experiential in your explanation. What I do know is I used to have this recurring dream when I had a fever during one childhood illness or another. Childhood illness has them puzzled. So I go on, the ones no one has anymore because vaccines. Measles, mumps, rubella, chickenpox. I had all of them back in the day. And when I did, I had feverish, delirious dreams of being in a warm, pulsing tunnel. Not unpleasant, but intense, crushing me lovingly from all sides. Then years later, when I was there at the birth of my own children, make of it what you will, guys.
Very interesting. Interesting look at that memory. Thanks for sharing that, Andrew.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Tim, as always.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, let's go to actually, you know what? I have to let some more people in. There's a bunch of people in the waiting room again. Okay. Let's go to Deb next. I think Deb might be a first-time caller. Let's see. Hey, Deb, how you doing?
Hello.
Is it your first time?
I did read a poem on the phone one time, so it's the first time there's a visual with me.
Yeah, it's interesting. We're finally to the number of episodes where I can't quite remember who's been on before and who hasn't. Yeah. So it's, for a while I could remember sort of everybody, but now it's kind of starting to get a little too many people, which is great, which is a wonderful thing. So what do you want to share?
So I'm a real new at this. Just recently got passionate about poetry and started to try to write. And I just found that there's a local group of poets, and they give an assignment every month, and gave an assignment to from Walt Marie, which is kind of like a word puzzle or word game. And I happened to write that about my mother's version of my earliest memory. And so then I thought, well, I should write my version of my earliest memory too. So I have both versions. And excellent. The thing I have two things to say before I read. One is that the Walt Marie, which is the second part, is a 10-line poem, and all the even lines are 2 syllables. And if you read those 2 syllables, then it forms a little embedded mini poem. So that was like the word puzzle, word game part of that.
Oh, that's interesting. I never heard that form before. What was it called? I
think it's just like a Walt Marie. And the woman who invented it, I'm going to forget her name. Candace someone? Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was kind of fun. And I just also want to say that I was at the beach with my fam and my dad, who's a good guy, took me for a walk, but got distracted when he ran into some old friends, and I wandered off, and he forgot I was with him. So when he got back to my mom, she was kind of wondering where I was, but so she has her version of the story, but my version is the one that I'll tell first.
Interesting. Okay, let's hear it. This is earliest memory prompt. This is Deb Tenenbaum. I didn't see your last name until I got the email up, but here you go.
Yeah. Okay, so it's memory watercolors, a scene of 2-year-old me alone at the edge of the ocean, forgotten, a dot no one sees, sitting on wet sand, looking around. Fringes of waves race in, tickle, then turn to flee. I laugh. Solo by the sea, drenched in sun, is a salty, sweet place to be. Ocean in front, beach behind, and I've become a curve of smile, breathing in my first memory of being, a watery streaming, melted and crisp. The briny ocean is a conjuring place to be. And then part 2, mom calling. A nurse, a dancer, a cancer survivor, my mom. If asked about her kids, she'd have 90 stories to tell. In one, I'm 2 years old, at the beach, ocean roaring. My dad takes me strolling, forgets I'm along, returns alone. Can you hear her calling? How she kept calling and calling my name. My mom, 90 years old, forgets my name.
Oh, that's wonderful. Especially, I love that form and what you did with it. That's great. So for those just listening, the my mom, 90 years old, forgets my name is embedded in that form with the 2-line or 2. Yeah, that's like hidden in there. That's great.
Yeah, maybe it could be a prompt.
Yeah, we're gonna have to do that. Yeah, maybe we should do it for that as a prompt. Well, I already had the prompt up. We'll do that as a prompt next week, I think. I'll put that in. And you have to like, did you mention the form? Email me the form so I know the name.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll look that up and we'll make that the prompt next week.
It's called a Walt Marie, like the name Walt and the name Marie together. Huh. And the woman who invented it is Candace something, but I forget her last name, but I'll email it to you.
Yeah, well, I could probably find it out. Walt Marie. Okay. And I'll put the name Candace in. See, when I Google it, just comes up with like Walmart and Mary Poppins things. So Walt Marie.
Okay, I'll send you the information.
Oh, all one word. I see. Okay, so here there's a thing for.
I forgot to say, I just love the interview.
Yeah, she was great. I love that, and her book is really, really fascinating. Okay, so I found this form. Let's make that the prompt for next week. Actually, it'll be fun. We'll change it up. So anyway, thanks for sharing that, and we'll go to somebody else now. Thanks, Deb.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. And I think I have to admit some more people. Let me see. Admit. There we go. Admit all. Okay, so let's go to Caitlin Bucksbaum.
Good morning.
Hey, Caitlin, how you doing today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Great. So, what do you have for us?
It is a prompt poem. I didn't use my very earliest memory, and the one that it's kind of a litany of memories. Mm-hmm. And my sister's birthday was yesterday, so that's what got me thinking about it. Just a bunch of memories we have. And the first one, I'm not even sure that I really remember it. I think there's a lot of early memories that I've heard the story, so I've kind of internalized, like, yeah, I remember that, or do I? So, it's pretty rough because I wrote it yesterday, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with it. But this is Family Ties.
Okay, I've got it up. Go ahead.
On my sister's 32nd birthday, a week after my 30th, I think of all the times we hurt ourselves or each other. Jumping on the couch, she splitting her lip on the coffee table at 3 or 4. Ice skating on Wasilla Lake, and she splitting her chin on it at 8 or 9. The neighbor boy only telling our mom, "Aaron needs you." Jumping out of a tree with a rope tied around my waist at 8 or 9. Her slowly returning to the house for help as I screamed. Hopping on my sled on the hill above her at Crevasse Moraine to run her down, maybe 11 or 12, only to badly sprain my finger on a head-sized rock. Mission failure. Playing badminton in our teens and accidentally hitting her in the eye with the birdie, her claiming I did it on purpose. The list goes on. But then graduation, separation, nostalgia, bonding. Is there any pain that won't knit a person in your memory forever? Add love, and that blanket will never unravel.
I love that turn at the end. Family ties. Thanks for sharing that, Caitlin, and happy birthday. A little belated for last week.
Thank you. Yeah, that's why I missed it. I was actually in New York City.
Oh wow, that's
last
fun.
weekend. So
that's a long trip from Alaska.
Yes, and it had to be a short one because I had to come back to finish out the school year. We just last day of school on Friday. So, phew, summer is here! Hooray!
Yeah, great. Well, it sounds like a great time. Though. Happy birthday, and thanks for sharing that poem.
Mike.
Okay, let's go to Jennifer Elise Wang. Hey, Jennifer, how you doing today?
I've been traveling.
Everybody's traveling. I guess the traveling's coming back now.
Yeah, I was like, I'm in Atlanta right now, and I wasn't sure that I would make it, so didn't get to do the prompt poem, even though I have an idea that I'm working on.
Very good. So what's in Atlanta that's going on?
At night, I'm a burlesque dancer, so I am doing an all Asian Pacific Islander burlesque show tonight.
Oh wow, that sounds fun.
Yeah. So that's gonna be fun. So I kind of took a cue from, I think it was TR last week, who was talking about reading old poems and kind of looking back and, sometimes cringing, but also appreciating that. So I submitted, since I'm on my old computer, I submitted one of my really old poems from like over 15 years ago from college. So it's called Rockstar, and it was in response to one of the first concerts I ever attended.
Excellent. Well, let's hear it. I have it up.
All right, Rockstar. I see him, eyes closed, heaven's light shining down. His words are promising, revealing. He opens his eyes to look for a memory of a muse, for the missing piece of his soul. Lost in the crowd, I wait, and he continues searching. Finally, our gazes make the elective connection. Every smile, every wink, every gesture closes the distance. I reach out to grasp the emotions we share, but they slip away with the fading melody, and I am swallowed in a sea of like-minded souls. I can never have him, for he is untouchable.
Excellent. Yeah, it's so great to look back at old stuff, isn't it? That's fun. Rockstar. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Jennifer.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, take care. And have fun tonight.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, and let's go next to Guy Chambers.
Hi, Tim. How's it going today?
Great. Good to see you, Guy.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I got a prompt poem here and that. And one thing that I mentioned about you talking about early in the show there about open mic reading and stuff like that, or reading the poem. I always find sometimes you read the poem, then actually hear the author read it. It's kind of different. It's still the same ring, but it's just a little different, more exciting. And plus, seeing it on screen too, and how the poet reads it, it makes it really different sometimes,
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this is my prop poem. This is one I call Cookie Jar. And what happened, this is one of my earliest memories, because I had one time I've written a whole bunch of stuff about my earlier days, just get it written down. And this one here's about my earliest memory. It's about a cookie jar. And we had a neighbor that was a really super nice person. And of course, back in those days, nobody locked doors and nothing like that. But she gave me the option of to come over into her shed, and she had a cookie jar there. Only once a day, you had to go pick one cookie, and that's it. And you can't do anything else. If not, the cookie jar take away. So this is what I kind of written about. It's kind of different, yeah.
Okay.
It's called Cookie Jar. In the porch next door, on the shelf, a jar full of cookies, a jar of trust, a jar of goodwill. Waiting on the other side of the fence, small eyes lurk. Foretaste, gratifying. Once a day, small footsteps cross the yard to the porch. Door always unlocked. Opening the door, quietly step in, reach for the jar. Reach in, pull out just one, only one cookie out of a jar of many. Small eyes fulfill. Push the jar back on the shelf. Close the door behind him. float back across the yard on cloud 9. Dream the rest of the day away for the next day cookie. Learning trust, being trusted, giving back trust. Rewarded with another cookie the next day. Still today lives in those eyes. So that,
yeah, I love that
yeah,
ending.
so
Thanks
that,
for sharing that. Yeah.
yeah, I was saying like just being trusted and you give the trust back, it's just learn that very, very young. It really goes a long way in life there. So, and I got another Michael poem right at the bottom there. I don't know if you got it there.
Yep, I see it there. Yep, rage.
Rage, okay. Rage. Rage in your head. Don't let it control your day.
Excellent. Yeah, great advice, Guy. Thanks for sharing both of those.
Yeah, like I say, like I was going to read some other poems about that because I got 3 poems coming up this week, again, launching 3 different books here coming up this week. So about maybe next week I'll read those ones.
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it, Guy. Congratulations on the books.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah, that's great.
Bye.
Take care.
Bye.
Okay, so it was Guy Chambers, and let's go. So Carol Newton, I see a video, but the audio is not connecting. So you might want to like log out of Zoom and log back in. I'm not sure what's going on, but I don't think we can get audio from you. Let's go to Potter King Badger O'Donohue.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Potter, how you doing today?
I'm good. I was so bitterly disappointed, as we always are when we get rejected and the poets respond thing. Oh, but my poem is the best. Jesus. Then I read Gordon Taylor's The Entertainers. Oh, that's a million times better than anything I could ever write.
Yeah, well, I just love that ending of that poem.
Oh, that was powerful. Like, yeah, I don't know what I'm saying. I have two poems. I quickly did a response to the prompt, and then another poem. Will I read both or one or neither?
Yeah, you can definitely do both.
Okay.
Okay, so you don't mind if people see your email address, do you? Bus poem?
No, I don't.
Okay, so because I'm not going to put in a word, I'll just put it up here. So here you go. This is the Twitter found poem.
Oh, Twitter found poem, right? Yes.
Oh, I have the other one too. If you want to start with that.
No, that's grand. Twitter found poem.
Okay.
Twitter found poem. Matisse, Georgia O'Keeffe, Yellow Taxis. Watch it now. 4 research-based strategies to ignite intrinsic motivation in students. Aretha Franklin did not leave a will. The Green New Deal, excited, edge of your seat. Women getting together to move boulders. Agency resources. We're delighted to announce, Gold Digger, we must vote for survival of our species. How could it be? Bukowski, Political Ecology of Agriculture. Pink Sweet Peas, 1926. Empty Mirror. No more cats. Ever.
Excellent. And then you get this picture too of a lost fountain. And you can...
Weird.
Yeah.
That's in Dublin. In Dublin on the lampposts, kind of random bits of guerrilla art just get posted, and some of them are good and some of them are just weird, but I love them all.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah.
They are very interesting. And my response to the prompt is a haiku. I know you love haiku, Tim.
I do. I enjoy haiku.
I'm learning to like them, a bit like I learned to like school. And this is called First Day at School. Just 7 long miles. Just those 7. No, Jesus, sorry. First day at school. Just 7 long miles. Just those massive gates closing. Just the first bad day.
Oh,
Thanks
excellent.
a million, Tim.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Take care. As always a pleasure, Potter. Okay, let's see. And I think, let me try to, yeah, so I just can't get to Carol Newton. The audio, the videos, it's weird. I've never seen this. The video's connected, but the audio's not. Yeah, it says Carol Newton is connecting audio and can't hear you yet. So she can't even hear that we can't hear. So, yeah, sorry, Carol. There's not much I can do. You have to see this later. So let's see. So let's go to So Ethna had a poem and had to leave just now. We didn't get to her in time. Let me share Ethna's poem. This is after. Actually, this I should put in a Word doc to protect her from being doxxed. Okay. Oops, not that. Where's this? Not that. And there. Okay, so here's Ethna's poem. After, in the delivery room, I held the midwife's eye, unsure she moved aside, her job was done. Cocooned in a room made golden with joy. Mother drank tea and tilted her head, curious. She knew. Driving home, father opened the sunroof wide to bring the world close. Spring branches laced the sky, and the radio told how, far away, the earth shook and buildings wavered. I felt it to be a fitting welcome. In this new life, I will be an artist. Excellent. After, in the delivery room. Thanks so much for sharing that, Ethna. And yeah, that was great. Sorry we couldn't get you in time. You had to leave. And that's Ethna. Her email says Ethna Longstaff. Is that? I think that might be different. So let me text or chat message Carol, because Carol can't hear me. Let's see. Okay, we'll see if that helps Carol. I'm not sure, because Carol can't hear me or hear you. The audio, the video is connected, but the audio is not, which is something I've never seen before. Let's play Carla Schwartz's poem, and then and we'll see if Carol can connect, and we'll wrap it up. Maybe I have a couple more people too. Let's let me see. Let's do Carla Schwartz's first memory. And this poem is called My Sister Remembers the Day I Was Born. So here's Carla Schwartz playing that one. Oops, this one. And then this. Let's just get rid of this. Sorry, shuffle a lot of screens around. Here comes Carla Schwartz with... there we go. Here's the poem.
My sister remembers the day I was born. A persona poem by Carla Schwartz. I remember at 2 the bundle Mommy carried in her arms made a barrier between Mommy and me, eclipsing Mommy's face. My sun, the light that shined on only me until that day at 2 when I felt darkness wallowed in the shadow of my sister became a distant moon. This poem is inspired by what I know to be my sister's earliest memory, even though she might not still remember.
fall down 7 times, stand up 8. And that was a quote by Nanakorobi Aoki. So thanks for sharing that, Jerry. Let's see. And Ted Guevara's earliest childhood memory. Earliest childhood voices. This is Ted Guevara's poem. Earliest childhood voices. Okay, you can get into this. There are no limitations. Unprepossessed, says. Unlike the edges of the paper, the bottom, the top claims impersonal. Our drives develop early on, even before... Sorry, I've been kind of muted. Let me, how long have I been muted? Because there was a dog barking while Carla Schwartz was playing. And so I turned it down at that point. What did I do before Carla Schwartz? Yeah, Tim, you're muted. Yeah. Okay, so let me do this again. Did I read? No, I can't remember. Let's see. Well, here's Ted Guevara's poem. Sorry. Yeah, the neighbor's dog was going crazy while Carla Schwartz was playing her thing. Earliest childhood voices. We'll read this Ted Guevara poem. Here we go. Earliest childhood voices. Okay, you can get into this. There are no limitations. Unprepossessed, says. Unlike the edges of the paper, the bottom, the top claims impersonal. Our drives develop early on, even before memory. The climbs and cliffs there, strictly business states. The fall is a merciless bottom, points out just. A nanny, a woman whose lure you couldn't have understood. She was equipped, but that too boggles your heaving. She wears lace garter and youth, asks for what purpose. In the dark, cold says, she is like a reader who cares not for your bones, the structure of you, the very development that would make you upright. She read you beforehand, before anything else, the genes of your parents. You are a poem that needn't be read further. All depths, all your interiors slid off the page the night she hovered over you like sparkles full of voided light. Or is it rejection, the kind that hides 1,000 miles away the instant you drop that work of pride in the mailbox? Your expectations permit you to get into this, but conditions are set already. You're right, explains like it is. Nothing is okay about it. Very interesting poem. Ted, always interesting poems from Ted Guevara. That was earliest childhood voices. And I think, let's see. Yeah, so we could never connect to Carol. That's the thing. I was trying to figure out how to get in touch with Carol. I think that was what I spent most of the time on mute doing, and babbling while I was doing that. So let me do the prompt poem, or not the prompt poem, the Poet Respond poem. Not the Poet Respond poem, the Sciku. Jeez. So you can tell I'm really exhausted. But this was the Sciku for today, and I don't have a poem either. But I said I would write a poem every week. And I'm going to continue doing that. So I owe you 2 poems next week, and hold me to that. This week was just too crazy to have any time to write. But the Sciku, though, which I did write one, this is a very interesting article here. This is from the University of New Mexico. And so ghostly mirror world might be cause of cosmic controversy. And so there's a whole bunch of the standard model in physics explains a lot, and a lot works, but there are a few things that make no sense. And one of them is Hubble's constant. There's the whole problem of dark matter, and we don't really know what that is. And so this new research study suggests that there's actually a mirror world of particles that interact with our world only via the gravity, only via gravity. So there's a whole world of particles that are a mirror of ours. Like for every there's anti-electrons and anti-protons in some other universe, and they interact just through gravity. So that would explain a lot of the problems actually with the standard model. And so the idea there is that there could be a whole nother you out there listening to me bumble through the end of this podcast, but it's a whole nother me. And so here's the Sciku for this week based on that. Mirror me, writing this haiku about me. That's Sciku. Mirror me, writing this haiku about me. That is the Sciku for today. That is the show for today. Now, next week's prompt, like I mentioned, we're going to do this, switch gears a little bit and try this. Let's try this Walt Marie form. And you can see, I'll put a link in the notes. You can see it here, Walt Marie Poetic Forms. It's Robert Lee Brewer has this great Writer's Digest column. He's been doing it for a very long time. This is a new one, though. It's only a year old, February 12th, 2021. He did this Poetic Form Fridays, he calls it, and he explains this Walt Marie subject, which is what you saw earlier in the episode. I think it was Deb that had that one. Yeah, it was Deb Tannenbaum. But so every other line just has 2 syllables, and those 2 syllables are pulled out into their own short poem. So a fascinating form. It's going to be fun to write. So that'll be the prompt for next week. Write a Walt Marie poem. And next week's guest on the Rattlecast is going to be Nancy Miller Gomez. So we published Nancy Miller Gomez. Her book Punishment is one of the chapbook that we published maybe 3-4 years ago about her work in the prison systems, teaching poetry there. A beautiful book, very moving. She's an amazing poet, though. She's one of the best poets I know who hasn't published a full-length book. She's got this amazing manuscript that I don't know how, it doesn't win every contest it ever enters, but she's still working on getting it out. So we're going to share some poems from that and read Punishment, which again is related to the summer issues theme because we have a whole section of poets writing in prison. There's Rattlecast number 146, the prompt to write a Walt Marie poem. And I hope you enjoy it. Hope you have a great week, and I will talk to you soon. Have a good day.